Namaste. So today topic is about understanding realism and idealism. I am Ajay Kumar Singh, working at Indira Gandhi National Open University School of Education. So today I will try to explain a very brief and succinct idea about realism and idealism. So student, this is the long standing debate, roughly about more than 2000 years. But we will try to explain it next 20 minutes. This has come under your Model 6, School of Thought, and this is the Unit 1, Idealism versus Realism. And then followed by this topic, we will also explain pragmatism and existentialism and naturalism and humanism in coming videos. So in this topic, I will try to explain what does we intended to learn. So we wanted to learn about, first of all, a brief idea about realism and idealism. Second, we should also know about how realism and idealism impact on education. I mean, when we are thinking about education, and suppose that we are wanted to construct education within idealist philosophy, how its impact on aim of education, how its impact on curriculum, how its impact on pedagogy, even the idea of schooling. Similarly, when we are thinking about realism, then how its impact. So idealism and realism both are a kind of a thought process. This is the school of thought. So, I mean, as I told you, this is not a very recent thought. This is, the philosophers are debating on idealism and realism from last 2000 years, actually more than 2000 years. Here we will not go on the history, but we will try briefly to understand that what does it mean. So, realism, before enter into this topic, I just wanted to know this is the realism, and on other hand, it is not the idealism, but ideaism. You know, ideaism means where the idea is dominating. Realism means where real life is dominating. So, when we are thinking about realism, this is the more pragmatic, concrete view about the things, situation, what you can touch through your hand, you can see through your eyes. Whatever you can sense, that come under the domain of realism. Realist philosopher always think about the fact which can be verified through senses, tangible fact, reality to be verified through senses. This is a kind of a doctrine that universe exists outside the mind. It's not the inside the mind. Actual world, the actual world that you see, it is actually exists outside the mind. Now, this is also a kind of a rejection toward where the idealist philosophy think it is the thought that is important. The same time, realist philosopher think, no, it's not thought, but it's the reality that is important. So, you can think about the realism is also come in a way of rejection to another philosophy that is already established from Aristotle time. Ideaism. So, before proceeding further, I will come again on this topic, but how realist philosopher define knowledge, how realist philosopher define method. What does it mean when how realism is actually impact on domain of education, and whether the scientific method to teach student is adequate, or how we are perceiving reality. So these are the domain and structure of realism. But before we will go to the how its impact on education, let us also think about idealism. So see, realism is the realist, as I told you, it's the reality. Reality, whatever you can sense, whatever you can verify. Whereas idealism is an idea. Idealism is also started with a way of negation. It's not the world that exists. It is the thought that exists. For example, you are observing this video on your mobile phone or TV. So this TV and mobile phone have the secondary nature. I mean, the important about the TV and mobile phone is your thought about the TV, something that your mind is thinking that yes, in my hand, whatever exists is called mobile. As soon as your mind reject, it is not a mobile, it's any other reality for you. So, idealism is also come through a kind of focus on idea. As I told you, it's not the idealism. Idealism is a general way to pronouncing it, but actually it is ideaism, where idea is important. I mean, if you go through Stanford Encyclopedia, it's indicate the two fundamental conception of idealism. Something mental, I mean mind, spirit, reason, will. I mean, you can't touch your mind. You can touch your head, but you can't touch your mind. Spirit, I mean ethos, that suppose that you have decided, yes, for this time I will top the university. This is your spirit, but nobody can touch your spirit. The spirit is in your mind. Similarly, reason. Suppose that I am saying that there are a lot of reason to believe that hard working students are always do good in their life. So this is the reason. If somebody wanted to touch this principle, it is impossible. So it is something mental, the way Stanford Encyclopedia explained. They have nothing to do with the reality that exists. I mean, reality in the form of logic can be, but it is not the material reality. So, although the existence of something independent of the mind is considered, everything that we can know about this mind independent reality is held, and to be so, prevented by the creative, formative and constructive activity of the mind. So, I mean, this is the definition. When somebody want to try to catch an idea within the definition, they incorporate all the word. But what we need to understand is that any kind of idea that come through the constructivist, formative or creative way, it's come under the domain of idealism. Idealism in education is actually believe that there is no bound of knowledge. It's not only restrict knowledge subject to the verifiability. I mean, verification is an important aspect, but we can't say that verification is the only way to learn. And so, when idealists define education, they go beyond verification. They go beyond, they establish their whole idea on the basis of thought. Now come to the differentiation between realism and idealism. Before that, I will take two subjects before enter into this definition, this distinction. Let us think about mathematics and on another hand physics or any science. When you are thinking about mathematics, I say, have you ever able in position in your life to see number 5? You can say yes, no. Actually, you can see 5 buses, you can see 5 banana, you can see 5 pencil, but 5 is actually not exist in the life. 5 is an idea. 5 is a notion in your mind. So something called that is the idea of 5. Similarly, 10 or 11. Or what does it mean? So it's not the real. You can't touch 5. You can touch 5 banana, but you can't touch 5. So when you can think about 5, it's come under the domain of realism. You can't verify why 5 is 5. So this kind of idea and thought process are actually domain of idealism. Whereas in realism, whatever you think, that are verifiable. I mean, the first and very famous notion about when Newton observed an apple is falling from the tree and coming to the ground. So he always, whenever you drop an apple from the upper side, it will drop on the ground. Anything, so he come to the something verifiable kind of the rules that every two objects in this universe are attracting each other on certain forces. So what does it mean by every two objects attracting each other? If Earth is attracting to me, I am also attracting to Earth. Though my mass is so small that it's hardly impact on Earth. So This is called the science. One hand you can find the domain like science, which is a full of realist philosophy, and similarly the subject like math, which is the where you can find out that the very rare verifiability. You can find, I mean, suppose that I can say you line, parallel, or 1 meter, or a parallelogram. In real life, we know, and physics established that in real life it is very difficult to measure something which is actually equal to 1 meter, because as soon as we will increase the sophistication of measuring instrument, then suddenly you find that there is an error in measure. But in mathematics you can say exact 5 or exact 2 meter, exact 3 meter. So you can find the distinction between idea and real. Idea is the pure. Idea is something called the pure truth, where real is about to pure, about to perfection. So this is important. Now idealism manifests itself in form of idea, picture, form, shapes. Idealism entails seeing through your own eyes. But how? It considers everything in its eternity, reality. According to idealism, it is merely a mental fabrication. In nutshell, it is more just a noble, superior way to viewing reality. They always question on realism. They always question on realist philosophy, and they say if mind don't have the idea about any real thing, suppose that there is a mountain. If mind refuse to accept it, that this is mountain, it is very difficult to accept the mountain is actually exist or not. So that is what the idealist philosophy say. It's all the idea. We can reach to the supreme truth or ultimate truth only through the exercise of idea. Whereas realist philosophy say no. Actual world exists outside of the mind. Contrary to idealist, they say whatever we can see, whatever we can touch, that are real. When we can see mountain, then only we start conceptualizing about mountain. Our mind start thinking about mountain or banana or road only once we see. Once we see or feel or experience, then only we can start thinking about that yes, this is mountain, yes, this is road, yes, this is banana. It's not that the thought, but it is the object which create these reality. So realist philosopher always think about that the realism, I mean the truth is exist outside of the mind. Of course, I mean you can find out the history. I mean whatever I am explaining is the long debate, the debate of last 2000 years. This lecture is not meant to provide you detail of all those great philosophers. However, those who among you interested, they can go through philosophy of Aristotle, philosophy of Plato, Spinoza, philosophy of Immanuel Kant. You can read maybe in subsequent classes when you can reach at the level of research or any other classes. You can certainly find out some of the detailed description about this idea. Now, I am also thinking about how these two ideas actually impact on education, because you are a student of education, or at least you wanted to understand education. So it is important to understand how idealist philosopher and realist philosopher are actually think about educational aim or role of teacher or curriculum or school or evaluation one by one. So let us first think about educational aim. So for idealist philosopher, it's the ability to think, ability to logic. Their approach is metaphysical. Their approach is logical. They are thinking about the way to know. I mean, how to know if something is there. So they are more abstract in nature. They are thinking that it is the duty of education to increase the abstract thinking capacity. So nowadays you can easily visualize there are so many people who are not good in mathematics. They are failed to think large scale, and that's why even sometime in the actual field we can find so many people who are not able to think at the large scale because they are not trained to think abstract level. Similarly, for example, in recent day, one of the very famous quotation that you can, famous incidents happen. A person asked to another, how many zero are in 1 trillion? Because 1 trillion is something actually large number. And we know that it is very large. I mean, if you have not capacity to think about abstract level, it's very difficult for you to visualize how large 1 trillion is. So, actually, idealist philosophy a philosopher help you to think on the large number. Whereas realist philosopher, large number and abstract number, whereas the realist philosopher are think about methodologically sound process. If they wanted, they always go with the process that can be verified through the method, verified through the scientific method. Suppose that there are a lot of water is coming through one direction, there is an obvious reason that now it's going to be the flood. So how do we know? We know through our experience. So this is the come under the domain of realism, where realist philosophers consolidate their experience and they wanted to train their learner. For them, education experience is to consolidate human experience, whatever we already experience through the path of the history. So you can find out the differentiation between educational aim once you start thinking about idealist and realist. Before proceeding further, I also wanted to explain your present day school is neither idealist nor realist. It is a mixture. So one hand you also learn mathematics. On other hand, you also learn social sciences and sciences. So this is important aspect. We need what component that coming from idealism and what component that coming from realism. So now second, what is the role of teacher? If it is the idealist class, the role of teacher is to facilitate student about think. They always respect the student idea. It's the idealist philosopher think that it's not the mine idea that is correct. A student can also be correct. A student can also be come out with a very fantastic idea. So teacher role is to facilitate a student to come out with their idea. Whereas in the case of realist, teacher facilitate a student to find out knowledge that can be verified. Teacher facilitate a student to generate knowledge through experiment. Teacher also facilitate a student to explore the real world, discovery, activity. So all these things come under the realism. So you can also find out what is the difference when the teacher is organizing himself or herself through a realist manner or through an idealist manner. So that is the path. I mean, in coming days, once you go deeper into the subject, then you can also start visualizing. Now, it is also important to think how idealist classroom look like and how realist classroom look like. So, idealist classroom, of course, probably you can notice, I have provided class and room in realist and classroom as a one subject in idealist. Very, very conscious effort. It's not the mistake. Now, idealist classroom, what I'm trying to say is that within the idealist classroom, idea come into an integrated manner. The class is not fragmented. Class is not divided into the multiple form, but idea come into an integrated manner, and we organize a class where a student can think. A student can come out their original thinking. A student can debate, discussion, dialogue, logic, all these are the parts. So we are providing opportunity within the classroom for debate, discussion, logic. Whereas in realist classroom, we fragment the things. We provide so many corner, that is called activity corner, experiment corner, that is called working corner. So in realist classroom, teacher aim to maximize the experience of learner, where we are always portraying multiple chart, module, books, activity element, instrument. So all these are the key feature of realist classroom, whereas idealist classroom is little different, where we are providing opportunity for discussion, debate, idea, abstraction, all these things. So these are the two major things that I'm trying to present. Now to conclude this, I pose some question. Now it is important for you to find out the answer of this question. It is not always a good idea that teacher should explain the all answer. But I will certainly like to discuss if on this question. What would be the method of instruction in idealist and realist classroom? Now you can think. You can think. I mean, when I'm saying what could be the method of instruction. So if it is the idealist class, there could be the more focused on thought process. If it is the realist class, then there is the more focus on experiment, activity, maximizing experience. So you can think, and what subject, which kind of instructional method will be better. So that is the first question. That is for you to think. Go to the Google and find out the answer that what could be the instruction method. The second question is, what are the role of a school with reference to idealist and realist? So in idealist school, actually school has a aim, as we discussed in first slide and we discussed earlier, that school has a aim, and this aim is about nurturing learner so that they can come out with a creative idea. So that is the role of a school. Whereas in realist form, when we are thinking about philosophy, realist philosophy, then the role of a school are little more. They need to facilitate learner so that learner himself or herself make capable to explore the world through the well identified and verifiable method. The role of a school to maximize experience, if we are thinking through the realist philosophy. So, I mean, you can find out the another role also. So, it is important for you, learner, that you should learn what are the role of a school. Now, what kind of pedagogy you adopt? I mean, earlier I told you instruction method. Now, pedagogy. Pedagogy is more deeper word than the mere instruction. Pedagogy is also incorporate learner background. So somebody is coming from a farmer family, then pedagogy should also incorporate those social construct. Now even if those social construct, how an idealist or realist philosopher respond to construct a pedagogy? I certainly think pedagogy is closely inbuilt with the subject, and the subject like mathematics, subject like science, these are the important aspect. So it's not the one pedagogy that applicable to the all subject, but in mathematics, probably nowadays there are very much focus and fashion toward the teaching mathematics through the concrete object and through the mathematics lab. But if you ask to an idealist philosopher, he will certainly oppose you, because idealist philosopher thinking that it's the duty of teaching learning process, is the duty of a school to facilitate learner about abstraction. But when you go to the mathematics lab, your abstraction capacity certainly be compromised. Probably some people ask that it is the beginning point. Ultimately they can. But this is not the convinced idealist philosopher. Whereas the realist philosopher are, as I told continuously, they are more oriented toward the things to be experienced, things to be verified. So this is the way. Where now what are the key subjects that are influenced by idealist or realist philosophy? Some of the subjects that I have already named, but some subject you need to find out. So even within the one subject, for example, in physics, there are a lot of things that you can verify, but there are certain formula that are not verified, that are actually contribution of mathematical thought. Even as of now, we don't have the verification for E equal to mc square, that the famous formula that was proposed by Albert Einstein. We don't have the verification for that. But what are the logic? It's come through the mathematics. It's come through the mathematical calculation. So it's not that the all things that are verified only can be knowledge. So it is important to understand. Now for further reading you can, because I understand nowadays it's very difficult, even if we are still working within the corona time, so it's very difficult to go to the actual library, but you can search certain thing. You can search Immanuel Kant on website, you can search Aristotle, you can search Plato, you can search idealism and realism, you can search educational implication of idealism and realism. These things that you can search and try to find out answer of this question. So it is really a big topic. This is the very brief presentation for you. I hope that it will motivate you for further learning. Thank you so much.